Welcome to the show. Let's talk to Ricardo Evangelista. I think I've pronounced that correctly. Senior Executive Officer at ActivTrades. Morning to you, Ricardo.
Morning.
Was that a good effort?
That was very good.
Thank you. Right, let's do a Forex special. Let's kick off with dollar yen. What are your thoughts on dollar yen?
Well, the dollar yen has been on the range for the last couple of weeks or so since the easing up of the Korean political stroke military crisis. The yen being a safe haven asset obviously reacts strongly to that sort of political, could be military tension. Since that eased up, we've seen that the expectation on the side of the yen has been very much on what's going to happen with the snap election that was called up recently by
Mr.
Prime
Kuroda.
Minister. Yes. Mr. Shinzo Abe is a very able politician, so the chances are, according to most analysts, that he will remain in power with a good, solid majority. That will also have an impact on the nomination of the new head of the Bank of Japan, which is coming up early next year, and that's all likely to already be priced into the value of the yen. So North Korea allowing, and it looks like that for the moment that crisis is not threatening to bubble up again, it's just simmering in there. I can see this range being maintained in the foreseeable future. On the other side of the currency pair, of course, we have the dollar, and the dollar is perhaps more exposed to a number of factors. So yesterday, as I'm sure you know, we had the publication of the minutes of the last Federal Reserve Committee meeting, where some of the governors that make up this committee expressed some concerns about inflation not being where it should be, and therefore that could somehow cap the expectation for a further interest rate rise this year, probably in December. That's had an impact on the dollar, but not so visible on the combination with the yen. So the dollar yen, trading on the range, wait and see.
So wait and see.
Yes.
There are times to buy, times to sell, and times to hold.
Exactly.
I've looked at that chart. I'm taking the same position
Yes.
on that. Let's move on then to euro dollar. I think on the charts it looks quite bearish.
It does. I mean, we've seen a recent recovery by the euro, which has been on the back of some very positive sides coming from the economies in terms of growth. However, we encountered the same issue that causes a concern to the monetary policy makers, which is very anemic inflation. We know that the ideal level of inflation is somewhere around the 2%, or it was seen as being the ideal level of inflation in the past, and this was thought to be strongly correlated to unemployment. So as soon as unemployment drops below a certain figure, inflation rises to that level.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not happening at the moment, so no one's quite sure why. This has perhaps caused some loss of credibility from on the central bank's side. So the investors don't really see the central banks as being such powerful market actors with the power to change the entire climate with their interest rate decisions. And no one really knows why. I mean, I suppose it could be because populations are aging, so rises in employment, the consequent wage rise is not leading to further spending because older populations tend to save more. So we see that the developed world today has an average population age that is much higher, older than it used to be, say, 30 years ago or 40 years ago. So therefore, the mechanisms that central banks had in the past, so rising the interest rates in order to slow down inflation, or dropping them to, increase demand, no longer seem to work in the same way. So the problem with the euro and the dollar is that the two currencies have been strongly manipulated by the central banks in the effort to recover from the crisis that started at the end of last decade. So at the moment we're seeing that the euro and the dollar seem to be, especially the euro, seems to be more susceptible to political crisis, for example, than to the policies of its own central bank.
Yeah.
So once again...
But at any given time, markets will either be driven by the fundamentals, the technicals, the politicals, and at the moment, clearly some of the currency pairs is all about the politicians, right?
Yes. So politics seem to have gained a more prominent role when it comes to determine what causes the behavior of the currency. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, especially with the tension in Spain, which seems to have eased up now.
Yeah.
But also we have other types of political uncertainty in the Eurozone and just around it. So with Brexit, for example, and which obviously will be very impactful on the UK side, but also on the European side. We have other elections coming up. We had the result of the German election with the rise of the far right there, which led to Chancellor Merkel losing some political capital because of the way she treated the last year's refugee crisis. So it'll be interesting to see, but I would agree with you that, yes, it's slightly on the bearish side, yes.
Okay, well, let's wrap up with cable, the great British pound that doesn't feel that great at the moment against the US dollar. There was a very good article in the FT a couple of weeks ago, basically saying that institutional fund managers were saying it was so choppy, it was so driven by politics, it was impossible to take a position in cable. I've looked at that chart. One day I'm bullish, the next day I'm bearish. What are you thinking?
Yes, these are interesting times for cable. We've seen a renaissance, if we can call it that, of the pound in the last few days against the dollar. The general feel is that no one really knows why, and everybody is asking everybody, do they know something we don't? So it will be interesting. I think much of the uncertainty surrounding the Brexit negotiations and the possibility of a no-deal divorce are already priced into the pound. It could be that some investors perhaps are hoping for an unlikely happy ending to this situation. Well, happy ending from a certain point of view, maybe not from another, politically speaking. But I would totally agree with you that it is very difficult to read that chart at the moment. And the pound, in the case of cable, is very much dependent on what goes on the other side as well. So I think that the repercussions on the pair from what happens in the US and what will be, for example, today's publication, today's numbers that will be published about inflation will have more of an impact than all these riffraffs regarding the political intrigue on the UK side. Okay, we're running out of time. I'm going to ask you two questions. Do the Federal Reserve basically put up interest rates in December? I know there's an 88% probability, I think, from 90% that they're going to go up. Are you buying that? I would be inclined to say yes, but I would rather answer that tomorrow morning after today's inflation figures. Okay. And secondly, Mr. Carney, that unreliable boyfriend, is he going to raise interest rates in the UK in November? I would be inclined to say no. Okay. You are now on tape. As always, Ricardo, a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you very much, Nick.